Section 3 of The Woman of the Wood by Abraham Merritt. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Ben Tucker. Part 3. The spectral trees wavered. Their outlines thickened out of immateriality into substance. The green translucence darkened. He had a swift, vertiginous moment as though he swung between two worlds. He closed his eyes, the dizziness passed, and he opened them, looked around him. He stood on the lakeward skirts of the little coppice. There were no shadows flitting, no sign of white women, nor of swarthy, green-clad men. His feet were on green moss. Gone was the soft golden carpet, with its bluets. Birches and firs clustered solidly before him. At his left was a sturdy fir in whose needled arms a broken birch tree lay withering. It was the birch that Polio's son had so wantonly slashed down. For an instant he saw within the fir and birch the immaterial outlines of the green-clad man and the slim girl who withered. For that instant, birch and fir, and girl and man seemed one and the same. He stepped back and his hands touched the smooth, cool bark of another birch that rose close at his right. Upon his hands the touch of that bark was like what? Curiously, was it like the touch of the long, slim hands of the woman of the scarlet lips? McKay stood there, staring, wondering, like a man who has but half awakened from dream. And suddenly a little wind stirred the leaves of the rounded birch beside him. The leaves murmured, sighed. The wind grew stronger, and the leaves whispered. "Slay," he heard them whispering, and again, "Slay, help us, slay." And the whisper was the voice of the woman of the scarlet lips. Rage, swift and unreasoning, sprang up in McKay. He began to run up through the coppice, up to where he knew was the old lodge in which dwelt Polio and his sons, and as he ran the wind blew stronger about him, and louder grew the whispering of the trees. "Slay," they whispered. "Slay them, save us, slay." "I will slay, I will save you." McKay, panting, hammer pulse beating in his ears, heard himself answering that ever more insistent command. And in his mind was but one desire, to clutch the throats of Polio and his sons, to crack their necks, to stand by them then and watch them wither like that slim girl in the arms of the green-clad man. He came to the edge of the coppice and burst from it out into a flood of sunshine. For 100 feet he ran, and then he was aware that the whispering command was stilled, that he heard no more that maddening rustling of wrathful leaves. A spell seemed to have been loosed from him. It was as though he had broken through some web of sorcery. McKay stopped, dropped upon the ground, buried his face in the grasses. He lay there marshalling his thoughts into some order of sanity. What had he been about to do? To rush upon those 3 men who lived in the old lodge and slay them? And for what? Because that unearthly scarlet-lipped woman whose kisses he still could feel upon his mouth had bade him. Because the whispering trees of the little wood had maddened him with that same command. For this he had been about to kill 3 men. What were that woman and her sisters and the green-clad swarthy gallants of theirs? Illusions of some waking dream? Phantoms born of the hypnosis of the swirling mist through which he had rowed and floated across the lake? Such things were not uncommon. McKay knew of those who, by watching the shifting clouds, could create and dwell for a time with wide-open eyes within some similar land of fantasy. Knew others who needed but to stare at smoothly falling water to set themselves within a world of waking dreams. There were those who could summon dreams by gazing into a ball of crystal, others who found dream life in saucers and shining ink. Might not the moving mists have laid those same fingers of hypnosis upon his own mind? And his love for the trees, the sense of appeal that he had felt so long, his memory of the wanton slaughter of the slim birch, have all combined to paint upon his drugged consciousness the phantasms he had beheld? McKay arose to his feet, shakily enough. He looked back at the coppice. There was no wind now. The leaves were silent, motionless. Reason with himself as he might, Something deep within him stubbornly asserted the reality of his experience. At any rate, he told himself, the little wood was far too beautiful to be despoiled. The old lodge was about 1/4 of a mile away. A path led up to it through the ragged fields. McKay walked up the path, climbed rickety steps, and paused, listening. He heard voices and knocked. The door was flung open, and old Paulo stood there, peering at him through half-shut, suspicious eyes. One of the sons stood close behind him. They stared at McKay with grim, hostile faces. He thought he heard a faint, far-off, despairing whisper from the distant wood. And it was as though the pair in the doorway heard it too, for their gaze shifted from him to the coppice, and he saw hatred flicker swiftly across their grim faces. Their gaze swept back to him. "What do you want?" demanded Paulo curtly. "I am a neighbor of yours, stopping at the inn," began McKay courteously.
"I know who you are," Paulo interrupted brusquely. "But what is it that you want?"
"I find the air of this place good for me," McKay stifled a rising anger. "I am thinking of staying for a year or more until my health is fully recovered. I would like to buy some of your land and build me a lodge upon it."
"Yes, monsieur." There was acid politeness now in the old man's voice. "But is it permitted to ask why you do not remain at the inn? Its fare is excellent, and you are well liked there."
"I have desire to be alone," replied McKay. "I do not like people too close to me. I would have my own land and sleep under my own roof."
"But why come to me?" asked Paulo. "There are many places upon the far side of the lake that you could secure. It is happy there, and this side is not happy, monsieur. But tell me, what part of my land is it that you desire?"
"That little wood yonder," answered McKay, and pointed to the coppice.
"Ah, I thought so,"
whispered Paulo, and between him and his son passed a look of somber understanding.
"That wood is not for sale, monsieur," he said.
"I can afford to pay well for what I want," said McKay. "Name your price."
"It is not for sale," repeated Paulo stolidly. "At any price."
"Oh, come," urged McKay, although his heart sank at the finality in that answer. "You have many acres, and what is it but a few trees? I can afford to gratify my fancies. I will give you all the worth of your other land for it."
"You have asked what that place that you so desire is, and you have answered that it is but a few trees," said Paulo slowly, and the tall son behind him laughed, abruptly, maliciously. "But it is more than that, monsieur. Oh, much more than that. And you know it, else why should you pay such a price as you offer? Yes, you know it, since you know also we are ready to destroy it, and you would save it. And who told you all that, monsieur?" he snarled.
There was such malignance, such black hatred in the face thrust suddenly close to McKay's, eyes blazing, teeth bared by uplifted lip, that involuntarily he recoiled.
"Only a few trees," snarled old Paulo. "Then who told him what we mean to do, eh, Pierre?"
Again the son laughed, and at that laughter McKay felt within him resurgence of his own blind hatred as he had fled through the whispering wood. He mastered himself, turned away. There was nothing he could do. Now. Paulo halted him.
"Monsieur," he said, "enter. There is something I would tell you. Something, too, I would show you."
He stood aside, bowing with a rough courtesy. McKay walked through the doorway. Paulo with his son followed him. He entered a large dim room whose ceiling was spanned with smoke-blackened beams. From these beams hung onion strings and herbs and smoke-cured meats. On one side was a wide fireplace. Huddled beside it sat Paulo's other son. He glanced up as they entered, and McKay saw that a bandage covered one side of his head, hiding his left eye. McKay recognized him as the one who had cut down the slim birch. The blow of the fir, he reflected with a certain satisfaction, had been no futile one. Old Paulo strode over to that son.
"Look, monsieur," he said, and lifted the bandage.
McKay saw with a tremor of horror a gaping blackened socket, red-rimmed and eyeless. "Good God, Paulo!" he cried. "But this man needs medical attention. I know something of wounds. Let me go across the lake and bring back my kid. I will attend him." Old Paulo shook his head, although his grim face for the first time softened. He drew the bandages back in place. "It heals," he said. "We have some skill in such things. You saw what did it. You watched from your boat as the cursed tree struck him. The eye was crushed and lay upon his cheek. I cut it away. Now he heals. We do not need your aid, monsieur." "Yet he ought not have cut the birch," muttered Mackay, more to himself than to be heard. "Why not?" asked old Paulo fiercely, "since it hated him." Mackay stared at him. What did this old peasant know? The words strengthened his deep, stubborn conviction that what he had seen and heard in the coppice had been actuality, no dream. And still more did Paulo's next words strengthen that conviction. "Monsieur," he said, "you come here as an ambassador of a sort. The wood has spoken to you. Well, as ambassador I shall speak to you. For centuries my people have lived in this place. A century we have owned this land. Monsieur, in all those years there have been no moment that the trees have not hated us, nor we the trees. For all those 100 years there have been hatred and battle between us and the forest. My father, monsieur, was crushed by a tree. My elder brother crippled by another. My father's father, woodsman that he was lost in the forest. He came back to us with mind gone, raving of woodwomen who had bewitched and mocked him, luring him in the swamp and fen and tangled thicket, tormenting him. In every generation the trees have taken their toll of us, women as well as men, maiming or killing us." "Accidents," interrupted Mackay. "This is childish, Paulo. You cannot blame the trees." "In your heart you do not believe so," said Paulo. "Listen, the feud is an ancient one. Centuries ago it began when we were serfs, slaves of the nobles, to cook, to keep us warm in winter. They let us pick up the faggots, the dead branches and twigs that dropped from trees. But if we cut down a tree to keep us warm, to keep our women and our children warm, yes, if we but tore down a branch, they hanged us, or threw us into dungeons to rot, or whipped us till our backs were red lattices. They had their broad fields, the nobles, but we must raise our food in the patches where the trees disdained to grow, and if they did thrust themselves into our poor patches, then, monsieur, we must let them have their way, or be flogged, or be thrown into dungeons, or be hanged. They pressed us in, the trees." The old man's voice grew sharp with fanatic hatred. "They stole our fields, and they took the food from the mouths of our children. They dropped their faggots to us like dole to beggars. They tempted us to warmth when the cold struck to our bones, and they bore us as fruit a swing at the end of the forester's ropes if we yielded to their tempting. Yes, monsieur, we died of cold that they might live. Our children died of hunger that their young might find root space. They despised us, the trees. We died that they might live, and we were men. Then, monsieur, came the revolution and the freedom. Ah, monsieur, then we took our toll, great logs roaring in the winter cold. No more huddling over the alms of faggots, fields where the trees had been. No more starving of our children, that theirs might live. Now the trees were the slaves, and we the masters. And the trees knew, and they hated us. But blow for blow, 100 of their lives for each life of ours. We have returned their hatred. With axe and torch we have fought them." "The trees!" shrieked Paulo suddenly, eyes blazing red rage, face writhing, foam at the corners of his mouth, and gray hair clutched in rigid hands. "The cursed trees! Armies of the trees creeping, closer, ever closer, crushing us in, stealing our fields as they did of old, building their dungeon round us as they built of old the dungeons of stone, creeping.
Armies of trees, legions of trees, the trees, the cursed trees.
McKay listened, appalled. Here was crimson heart of hate, madness. But what was at the root of it? Some deep, inherited instinct coming down from forefathers who had hated the forest as a symbol of their masters. Forefathers whose tides of hatred had overflowed to the green life on which the nobles had laid their taboo, as one neglected child will hate the favorite on whom love and gifts are lavished. In such warped minds, the crushing fall of a tree, the maiming sweep of a branch, might appear as deliberate. The natural growth of the forest seemed the implacable advance of an enemy. And yet, the blow of the fir, as the cut birch fell, had been deliberate. And there had been those women of the wood.
Patience, the standing sun touched the old man's shoulder. Patience, soon we strike our blow.
Some of the frenzy died out of Paulo's face.
Though we cut down 100, he whispered, by the 100 they return, but one of us, when they strike, he does not return, no. They have numbers and they have time. We are now but 3, and we have little time. They watch us as we go through the forest, alert to trip, to strike, to crush. But, monsieur, he turned bloodshot eyes to McKay, we strike our blow, even as Pierre has said, we strike at that coppice that you so desire. We strike there because it is the very heart of the forest. There the secret life of the forest runs at full tide. We know and you know. Something that, destroyed, will take the heart out of the forest, will make it know us for its masters.
The women, the standing sun's eyes glittered malignantly.
I've seen the women there, the fair women with the shining skins, who invite and mock and vanish before hands can seize them. The fair women who peer into our windows in the night and mock us, muttered the eyeless sun. They shall mock no more, shouted old Paulo. Soon they shall lie dying. All of them, they die.
He caught McKay by the shoulders, shook him like a child.
Go tell them that, he shouted. Say to them that this very day we destroy them. Say to them it is we who will laugh when winter comes and we watch their bodies blaze in this hearth of ours and warm us. Go, tell them that.
He spun McKay around, pushed him to the door, opened it, and flung him staggering down the steps. He heard the tall sun laugh, the door close. Blind with rage, he rushed up the steps and hurled himself against the door. Again the tall sun laughed. McKay beat at the door with clenched fists, cursing. The 3 within paid no heed. Despair began to dull his rage. Could the trees help him, counsel him? He turned and walked slowly down the field path to the little wood. End of Part 3.